Today's video is a compilation of several weeks of effort on this Falcon that I've been working on. In the video, I do manage to get the front strut rod bushings replaced, and then I have actually, in anticipation of taking it for a ride, I try to reassemble the rear brakes with the new wheel cylinder, and well, it doesn't go quite like I thought it would go. So with that, I appreciate you guys being here, and if you like Falcons, well, they can be a mixed blessing. Somewhere in all this mess over here, I've got new bushings to replace these. You can see those are pretty shot. Same on that side. It looks like they're pretty easy to change, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. First things first is really the threads on this thing are pretty dirty, so I'm going to wire brush those, and then I'm going to, once I have them wire brushed, I'm going to then probably lubricate everything to make it easier. So this comes back here and it attaches here, and I think the bolt is under here, so hopefully you can see all that. It looks like a pretty simple job to me, and it'll locate this better. I know when I drove it that it was kind of pulling all over the place, so with that we'll dive right in. I've got two bolts back here that I've lubricated, and then I've got this bolt up here that's a 1 1/16 inch size, and I've got an opening wrench that I can't get in there, but the other side, the box end, is actually this bolt that's coming through from the top is hitting that, so I can't get a wrench in there, so I've got to take that off, which will be from up here. I'll be able to remove that, so I'll have to take that off, hopefully get that box end in here, and then hope that this doesn't twist these loose, because it's going to be a lot of torque on this thing to get it loose. So yeah, I've got my work cut out for me. A little more disassembly than I required. This side is a little better. I can actually get a box end, or I can get the open end on here right now, but that one has the same exact situation where it's got a bolt coming down from the top that's just up here, and I'm sure it holds something on, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, that's where we're at. Just working on cars is really just overcoming one thing after another, so we'll do that. Well, I got it out, and in the process of getting it out, I was able to put to bed one of my fantasies about this being a big drag racer and having that front wheel pulled forward for the purposes of cheating the lights. This was just pulled forward for the purpose of, it must have got loose and gotten a little squirrely under braking, and they just ran the back nut farther back and went ahead and moved the front nut onto new threads, which pulled the whole thing up, which pulled the wheel forward. So it's more about neglect and abuse than it is about any kind of a storied, glamorous, heroic drag racing journey. And so, I mean, it is an old drag car. It does not have a heater box. It does have a limited slip and everything else. 9-inch coil springs, like 10 leaves on each side. But anyway, as you can see, these are pretty well destroyed. I've got some new ones here to put on, but I did go ahead last night. I started thinking about this and kind of came to that conclusion that this got loose. It rattled around and wore the threads off of that section, and then they just came up with an easy fix just to keep it on the road. So yeah, one of the things I do want to share with you though is it was a pain getting it out. They were pretty tight, and I had to use cheater bars. I think I got every tool out here that I own. Not really, but a lot of them. And one of the things I discovered was It's a lot easier to take those strut rod nuts off if you have it on the ground, just because when it's up in the air like this, it's held at a different angle, and so when that drops, it tilts this up, and then the socket that you put on there will wedge against here as you loosen it. And so by putting it on the ground, I was able to then get it off and then lift it back up again. I took the other side off. I'm leaving this side up for now because, well, I just need to take it off. But I've got the other part on order, and it will be coming. One of the things, though, when I did lower it, I didn't check that I had everything out of the way. And so I had a bucket under here catching, it had a little bit of oil in it, and it also had some, it was picking up brake fluid that was dripping out of the brake line. And so as a result, I crushed it and spilled a bunch of oil under here. So I had to go inside, and not inside, but to the front porch and get the ash can and get a bunch of ashes and spread them out here. That's a great way to absorb oil and that kind of stuff. So I've got a huge mess back here that I've got to clean up. But that's what happens when you don't take the steps, pay attention. But we've made progress, and that's all that matters. I think I'll have that here maybe in a few days, and we'll get that put together. Alright, our parts are in. Basically a new strut rod, comes with the hardware, and a nice Auto Crafters catalog for the Falcon. So I'll go ahead and just throw that in. A quick side-by-side comparison is always a good idea, and so I think we've got them lined up here. One difference I see is that the threads go farther back on the new piece, which will make it easier to install. These threads are thicker around, but then we taper up here where this is just a solid the whole way. I did measure, and I got 0.788 inches here, and I got 0.768 here, so we're actually beefier on this one. And then it starts to taper right around here, and this one starts to taper back here. So a little bit of a difference, but I mean, this is a reproduction piece, and I'm sure functionally it'll do the job that it needs to do. So, all right, strut rods are in. Let's take a look. And so we've got that one in and that one in, and everything's bolted up. I made an attempt to adjust the length, not knowing anything about alignment, but I've got a pretty good gap here now, and I believe I've got the same thing going on this side. A pretty good gap now there, and we'll have to get it on the ground and see how things settle out. But I think there's still more work to be done before we can enjoy the fruits of our labor, so we'll go ahead and work on those rear brakes now. Okay, very frustrating day yesterday. I just needed to put the rear brake back together that was leaking from the wheel cylinder. I had taken the old one apart, and I was gonna just go ahead and rebuild it, but then I thought, well, I can get another one for $13, so I was able to use the numbers on the old wheel cylinder and cross-reference them to a part number. It seems like this is about a 1960 rear axle out of a larger Ford sedan. Anyway, then I had to put it back together, and it's been a long time since I've done drum brakes, and you lose a lot of skill over time when you're working on brakes. And it took me, I spent hours on it yesterday trying to get the springs to go on, and then I finally went down to Harbor Freight and I picked up some tools because I didn't have any. And so I got this thing, and I was able to use it to get it done, but I did manage to bend it a couple of times when I was trying to use it. So I'm going to take it back, and I've got another one on order just to have a higher quality one so that I can have but basically the way you use these is you hook them on something, and you hook the spring, and then you bring it in, and then you loop it over. The hardest part for me was getting this piece on, which is the basically you have an aligning plate, then you have a cable, and then the springs go on top of that. And when you have it all put together, or when you're trying to put it together, it wants to pop out, and so you don't have the space you need, and so you lose the cable. Or anyway, it was super big pain in the butt. And I several times, maybe I might have thrown some things, which is not in my normal behavior, but I was so frustrated with it yesterday that I walked away from it several times. I would come back expecting to be able to have a calmer mindset about it, and finally today I came back, and in 30 minutes I made more progress than I did all day yesterday. So, and then I finally just completed the last little bit, which is the bottom part of this. I've gone ahead and adjusted the brake shoes out as far as I can, and still getting that on. And that'll mean that the self-adjusting mechanism will have less work to do. I did just go ahead and use the old brake shoes. They were kind of soaked in brake fluid, but I cleaned them really well, and I just don't know if this axle is going to last for me. So I do have the other side not apart, it's all together, and I was using it as my model to get this one back together, but I'm thinking that it's not leaking, and so I might just put it together. I need to drive this thing, and this video has been already a long time in the making, and I need to just get it completed. So I almost completed it last night with just a fail, but I'm going to go ahead and try to do it, try to finish this up and see if I can get this thing going. All right. We're going to have to call this a failure. That new wheel cylinder is leaking from the back side there, so all of this has to come back apart. I probably should have disassembled it and looked at it before going any further. Anyway, that's where we're at. So I'm not gonna put this together and go for a drive. I'm gonna stop and not contaminate everything all over again with brake fluid everywhere and no brakes. This car doesn't have an emergency brake on it. Somehow that was removed at some point. It's got the stuff for it. I just need to, the cable is missing that goes up to the front, and so is the actual brake lever. So that may be something I have to reinstall. But in the meantime, I've got more work to do. So that's going to have to finish this particular video, and we will have to give you a driving video later on. I don't want to do something unsafe. So with that, thank you for watching, and I appreciate your patience. We will continue to work on this Falcon and try to get it going.